Depicting the world's greatest athletes on screen as 10 shades lighter with none of the energy, athleticism, or intensity they have is a disservice, and I hope one day that we stop accepting it. For the people who think that Challengers was written for Zendaya or with her in mind, it was not. The writer Justin Kritsky wanted the character of Tashi Duncan to be played by a black actor, and when Zendaya expressed interest, he felt it was a perfect match because of the cultural space she occupies. Hollywood's acceptable version of a black girl. When asked in an interview if the story was always about a black woman and two white men, he said, "Yeah, absolutely. She was always a black woman. Art and Patrick were always white boys. Patrick was always a very well-to-do Jewish guy, and Art was always a somewhat well-to-do WASP. Certainly, the reason for Tashi being black is that we can't really tell the story of American tennis over the past however many decades without telling a story of black women. It just kind of felt ridiculous to create a love triangle set in the tennis world with 3 American players and not have one of them be a black woman, because that is the story of American women's tennis, if you look at all of the big superstars from the past decade. I knew that instinctually. It was also, again, a movie that was partially inspired by me watching this match between these two very different black women at different stages in their careers. The black women being Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka. I want to make it clear that I think everyone deserves representation and that there's room for all of us, but acting like there's no distinctions in the experience of black people and biracial people does all of us an injustice. Think of it like a Venn diagram. There's definitely overlap, but there are 2 distinct experiences. Also, this isn't just a black issue. Emma Chang Cradle did an amazing video on Asian representation that I highly recommend you check out, and I'll be echoing some of the same points here. But some things are specific to the black experience, and I'm going to expand on that today. By the way, this is the only disclaimer I'm making for this video. I found that people who don't like boundaries or distinctions typically want the advantages that come from taking up your space.
Now place your bets as to who that benefits.
Staying silent about these issues only serves to benefit those who are complicit with the erasure of monoracial black women, and surprise, surprise, I'm not one of those people. Okay, come on in everyone. Welcome back to Lonnie's Lens, my little corner of the internet where I talk about film, TV, pop culture, and literally whatever else is on my mind. If you love thoughtful deep dives, camp, and a bit of whimsy, you're in the right place. If you'd like to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can follow me on Letterboxd to see what I've been watching lately. And as always, there will be a companion playlist for this video. It doesn't really fit the topic. I don't know how I could, but it is just what I've been listening to lately, and it mostly composes Aisha Erotica and RuPaul. So take that as you will. Everything will be linked down in the description below, and this is probably going to be a pretty long one, so let's just get right into the video. Chapter 1. Why Zendaya? I've seen a few videos on YouTube about this topic, but they all mostly talk about Amandla Sternberg, which I believe is for a few reasons. She is the worst culprit by far, like it's not even close. Completely shameless in her erasure, but I also think she's an easy scapegoat. Amandla isn't a household name, and the roles she takes are typically like B movies. There have been significant roles here and there, but are we complaining about the film where she fell in love with a Nazi? The criticism of her is fair and warranted, but I think there's a fear in addressing those who are similar to her and those who have a lot more power in the industry. I find Zendaya to be a far more compelling subject for this topic because of how defensive people, especially the black community and the industry, are of her, and how subtle her role in the erasure of black women has been.
I keep it undercover.
It's to the point where anyone who tries to bring it up is immediately shut down, and I'm not one to back away from a challenger. Boo, I know, boo, boo. I thought it was funny, especially when the evidence is right there in front of all of our faces and we're willfully ignoring it. A lot of people say the oversaturation of Zendaya is overblown and that she hasn't been in that many roles, and this defense is so funny to me. They'll be like, she was only in 2 films last year, and it's Challengers and Dune, 2 of the biggest blockbuster movies, and she was paid $10 million and $2 million for them respectively, but only 2 movies, right? And I want you to name a monoracial black actress with even comparable success and was paid anywhere near what Zendaya has been paid. Right. And if you say Iowa Debris, you are so unserious. I was having her first feature role this year, and her other biggest films were either animated, supporting roles, or indie films, so no. Also, I found that Keke Palmer only made $700,000 for Nope, despite being a lead for the 2-hour runtime, compared to Zendaya's $300,000 for the 7 minutes that she was in Dune. Legacy black actresses like Taraji P. Henson and Monique have to advocate to be paid properly despite proving their abilities in the industry for decades. So why is there no discrepancy in Zendaya's pay? In the wise words of Jessie Woo, those continents ain't mean. The continents ain't mean. Unless you genuinely believe that Zendaya is so much more talented and marketable, whatever that means, to where she should be paid appropriately. I think Zendaya should be paid appropriately, but why not her darker skinned monoracial black counterparts? Quickly, one of my favorite things to do on the internet is find the copy pasta like prepackaged responses to anyone's attempt to hold any celebrity accountable. For example, anytime anyone talks about Childish Gambino's weird fetishistic behavior towards Asian women or his weird depictions of black women, the go-to response is always, well, black girls were mean to him in high school, so of course he has to depict them as regressive stereotypes for the rest of his career. And why shouldn't he fetishize Asian women? And if you don't believe me, go check out the comments for my fetishes. Well, watch it first, but go check out the comments under my fetishization canon event video, and you will find 50 iterations of the exact same comment. I'm not lying. Another example is how Selena Gomez fans defend her casting in Emilia Perez despite her limited Spanish skills by claiming her character was intentionally written to be bad at Spanish. But we should question, was this character trait originally in the script, or was it added after the fact to justify casting Selena Gomez because she's a major star? This modification wasn't essential to the plot, but really just served to justify casting a marketable name over actresses who might be more skilled in acting and also the Spanish language. It's another case where industry power and marketability determine opportunities, with adjustments made to fit certain performers rather than casting who's actually best fit for the role. The one I see the most often and that bothers me most refers to the people's princess herself, Zendaya. I say the people's princess, but I feel the industry's princess might be more accurate. There's more fatigue and indifference to Zendaya and her underwhelming acting abilities that gets overshadowed by the industry's constant promotion of her and ambivalent casual viewers who are just happy to see a pretty, thin, racially ambiguous face. Zendaya talked about being Hollywood's acceptable version of a black girl, and how she understands this is problematic and deliberately chooses roles meant for white women.
The opportunities are there, we will pave the way for our opportunity. And not just the opportunity for myself, but for my entire community. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a black woman, as a light-skinned black woman, that's important that I say, listen, I'm using my privilege and my platform to show you how much beauty there is in the African American community and how much more. Because, you know, I always find it weird that Hollywood, I mean, I wish you guys could be in these meetings, but Hollywood, Hollywood's, I guess you could say, acceptable version of a black girl, and that has to change. You know what I mean? Like, we're vastly too beautiful and too interesting for me to just be the only representation of that.
Ooh, girl,
you know,
it's Sunday.
So
and you're preaching.
Right. But what I'm saying is about creating those opportunities. Sometimes you have to create the path.
I definitely don't say I have the same challenges as a darker skinned black woman, because I don't. But I do like to take my privileges that I have as a lighter skinned black woman and help them and shine light on those issues, because I think that's important and that we should constantly uplift each other and push for acceptance of all women of color.
But let's take a look at her most recent film that completely contradicts this statement, Challengers. I saw a tweet around the time that Challengers came out where someone said something along the lines of, I love Zendaya because she stayed true to her vow of only taking roles for white women, like in this tennis movie. It had so many likes and I was genuinely confused. Why does it being a tennis film make it white? When I think of tennis, I think of Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Naomi Osaka, and now Coco Gauff. And to be fair, I'm not a tennis fan, but I am a fan of black women, so maybe I'm biased. But funnily enough, even the screenwriter for Challengers had the exact same thought process. When asked in an interview if the story was always about a black woman and two white men, he said, yeah, absolutely. She was always a black woman. Art and Patrick were always white boys. Patrick was always a very well-to-do Jewish guy, and Art was always a somewhat well-to-do WASP. Certainly, the reason for Tashi being black is that we can't really tell the story of American tennis over the past however many decades without telling a story of black women. It just kind of felt ridiculous to create a love triangle set in the tennis world with 3 American players and not have one of them be a black woman, because that is the story of American women's tennis if you look at all of the big superstars from the past decade. I knew that instinctually. It was also, again, a movie that was partially inspired by me watching this match between these 2 very different black women at different stages in their careers. The black women being Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka. So this completely proves that Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka and black women like them in tennis were the inspiration for Tashi Duncan in Challengers. The first page of the script for Challengers has descriptions of the main 3 characters, and Tashi is simply simply described as 33 years old and black. So the obvious question here is, why is the logical conclusion to represent black women in tennis casting Zendaya? The screenwriter's own words make it clear this role was specifically written for a black woman, inspired directly by black tennis stars. As both the star and a producer of the film, Zendaya had both knowledge of and influence over this casting decision, but she only takes roles meant for white women. Right. Maybe the devil's in the details, because maybe she's saying, I won't audition, but if I'm going to produce the film, sure, I'll take a black woman's role. And Zendaya, maybe she realized she's not willing to be an ally in that way anymore. But my problem is more so with the people who go and blindly spread this message without actually looking into it and don't actually care if Zendaya is staying true to her word. That's what bothers me.
There's something about the fact that Zendaya stays going after roles meant for white girls, despite the fact.
The reason why Zendaya is everywhere is because she and her team are smart. Not only does she know what she stands for, but she doesn't go out for the roles that are specifically for black women because she knows that she has a leg up. She knows that as a biracial, thin, light-skinned woman with demure features, that she would be up against black women who are more disenfranchised than she is. And I respect the heck out of that. Please ignore my broken nail. I'm sorry. She's like, I'm gonna let y'all do your thing over here, but I'm gonna go over there. And I think that's incredible.
In my opinion, it's actually worse than just auditioning for a black role. She was actually a producer for the film, and I know a lot of people aren't aware of what producers do. I truly wasn't until recently. I just know that clip of Drake being like, it's executive producing, like it's producing.
Is it true you're an executive producer?
Yes.
What have you executive produced?
Euphoria,
Oh, really?
which is a television show.
What does that mean, executive producer? What does that mean?
It just means that you're, executive producing.
Right.
Speaking of Drake, we'll get to him later in the video. She was a producer for the film, and producers are typically very heavily involved in casting and typically have the final say. The idea that casting directors have so much power is not true at all. And so when people say, oh, we need to be focused on casting directors and the choices that they make, no, we need to be looking at producers like Zendaya. And the other thing is, how many people know the names of casting directors? I don't know any of the people's names on Zendaya's team, her publicists, I don't know who they are. So when I say Zendaya, I know it's her team. I know there's people behind her doing this. She's the face of it. So that's who we have to hold accountable when we're talking about things like this. So with her producer role, she decided to cast herself as Tashi Duncan alongside Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor. And I don't even completely fault the screenwriter, because having a name like Zendaya reach out to you and be willing to produce your project is probably the fastest way to get it greenlit. And I can understand the impulse to just let it happen, especially if you're a white man and you don't know the difference between a biracial woman and a black woman, but I digress. I actually really enjoyed Challengers when I saw it last year, but I'm easy. You put house music and homoeroticism in a film and I'm sad. But upon reflection and what I know now, the idea that Challengers is a story about race in tennis is completely ludicrous. It doesn't even touch the surface. My biggest issue with Challengers is that it is a sensual, erotic film where the majority of Tashi's characterization is her attractiveness, and the two male leads are practically drooling over her in every scene. Why is it that a woman that looks like Serena Williams or Naomi Osaka, who the character was inspired by, was not considered for the role? This is because anti-blackness says that Zendaya is believably attractive and Serena Williams is not. I understand that movies are supposed to be cast for the big screen and get people who look like movie stars, but that begs the question, why not a Keke Palmer? Why not a Coco Jones? They have star power, the acting chops, and would more closely resemble the athletes who inspired the character. And it's so common for men in the industry to bulk up for roles and spend months training to resemble the athletes they're portraying, especially when they're portraying real life figures or characters inspired by them. They'll gain 20 pounds of muscle, train for months with professional coaches, and even use prosthetics to complete the look. And it's not just a male thing. Look at Sydney Sweeney's preparation for her next role as a female boxer, completely transforming her body through intense training. So why doesn't the same standard apply when casting black female athletes? Zendaya did a fraction of this preparation and gets praised for her dedication to the role. Why is physical resemblance and athletic authenticity suddenly less important? The industry obviously has methods for creating authentic athletic portrayals when desired. The decision not to employ these methods for a character inspired by Serena Williams and black women in tennis feels like another example of how monoracial dark-skinned black women are erased from their own narratives. Zendaya is white passing, and if you disagree, look at her stunt double for the film. And her salary, honestly. $10 million for your first feature role? Black women don't receive anywhere close to $10 million for their first lead role in a film, and decades after proving to be a success and proving their acting abilities like Taraji P. Henson, they still don't get paid adequately. In an interview, when asked who she'd like to play her in her biopic, Simone Biles, without hesitation, said Zendaya. Are we seeing the pattern? Aside from just the skin tone and parents, Zendaya is a slim 5'8", and Simone Biles is in peak gymnast form and ripped from head to toe, all 48 inches, and saw herself in Zendaya. The world makes fun of women who look like Serena Williams in their natural state, and when she takes steps to look like the women we uphold, wearing wigs with loose textures and wearing a lighter shade foundation, she gets even more ridicule and judgment. Of course, Tyla is black, and when she says otherwise, the black community gets defensive. But then we make fun of Iowa Debris for wearing her hair in a middle part and question her blackness, despite having a Nigerian father and a Nigerian mother from Barbados. At some point, we have to admit that there's nothing monoracial dark-skinned black women can do to impress us, because the world doesn't want them to. Even casting a biracial actress of black and Asian descent to honor Naomi Osaka would have been interesting and compelling for a type of representation we haven't seen yet. But for some reason, that's not an option. I think it's so odd that we approach this discussion of like biracial identity and only acknowledge combinations of white and other races. Like it's black and white and Asian. Why don't we talk about black and Asian representation? Like there's so many different ways to be biracial, and the fact that we just act like it's black or white is so ridiculous to me. To quote the lovely film critic and essayist Angelica Jade Bastian, it's kind of weird for challengers to have that white boy line because it's a movie that doesn't actually give a shit about race. Do you think white people are comfortable with black women's actual fully embodied anger? Of course not. It would turn to them. It is hard for me to look at her as an exalted actress who deserves all this power because there are so many talented young black actors who get one good role before their careers flatline. Look at the men in Moonlight, Trevante Rhodes and Ashton Sanders. Look at Anna Diop. That woman is amazing. I'm happy there's a powerful black actress, but the fact that Zendaya is pretty much the only younger one who has this kind of power is not a compliment to her, but a diss toward Hollywood. If she was so instrumental in the casting of challengers, it behooves us to ask, why are you surrounded by white people if you have the power not to be? This is speculation, but I don't think Zendaya is particularly passionate about acting. She shows up, but she has a clear interest in producing, and has been since she was 16 with Casey Undercover. But when producing, she insists on being the lead role, inserting herself in films where she's either the only black character among white people or biracial amongst black people. But in her production efforts, there aren't any attempts at representing biracial narratives that would represent her and her experience. I notice biracial people are always advocating for their own space and space to talk about their own experiences and have their own stories represented, but when presented with the power to make their own, they don't, and compulsively take roles for black people. But this isn't new. The subtle erasure began early in Zendaya's career when she was still on Disney Channel starring as the lead in Casey Undercover. In this series, she played the teenage daughter in a black household with 2 black parents and 2 black siblings. Zendaya herself has a white mother and a black father, and she was involved in the decision to depict an all-black family for the show. While this decision may have been intended to provide representation, it inadvertently contributed to the confusion between biracial black women and monoracial black women. It's worth noting that this portrayal was not uncommon in the past, as seen in sitcoms like The Cosby Show with Lisa Bonet. However, by the early 2000s, there was a shift towards more accurate representation, such as in Disney's Twitches in 2007, where Tia and Tamara Mowry played twins with a black mother and a white father, reflecting their real-life parents. So by 2014, when Casey Undercover was airing, there was no real excuse for this. But Zendaya advocated for the family to be all black because she thought that representation was needed. But why not advocate for the representation of an interracial family that resembled her own, or for a fully black lead to play her role instead of weirdly upholding the legacy of the conveniently lighter skinned and biracial older daughter? And it's also interesting to see that Zendaya had producing power. She was a producer on Casey Undercover as well at the age of 16. How often do we see young black women given that power in the industry? But also, if they wanted Zendaya as the lead, simply making her parents an interracial couple and her siblings biracial as well would create the very much needed representation for biracial people like Zendaya. But instead, the fully black family with Zendaya lumped in perpetuates the idea that biracial black women and black women are one and the same with absolutely no distinction, leading to the further erasure of black women, and especially dark-skinned black women, with Afrocentric features. Unfortunately, this is now an industry norm with countless examples. The first one that comes to mind is Jazz Sinclair in Gen V, where the boys in Gen V are very selective about when they show black people. They only showed a black family when they were trying to show that Stormfront was racist and completely killed them, and then in Gen V, they made both both of Jess and Claire's characters' parents black, even though her and her sister were both biracial, and both unambiguously black parents get slaughtered in the first episode. So, right. Yara Shahidi is also an example in multiple projects. Most notably would probably be The Sun is Also a Star, where she's supposed to be the child of Nigerian immigrants, and even her co-star Charles Melton, who is white and Asian, plays a character that is supposed to just be fully Korean. But I can go on and on for days. There's my Hala Harold, who I love, Amanda Sternberg, but there's so many more examples, and I would be here all day. I've already been filming for 30 minutes. I'm not going to list every biracial woman in a YA film. There are so many examples of biracial actresses in roles where both parents are black, and so few where the parents are an interracial couple, and it's weird because it's such a simple fix, but there's no incentive to change it, really. Zendaya's black counterparts, who also had lead roles on Disney, like Coco Jones and China Anne McClain, have not seen nearly the same amount of mainstream success since their time on Disney. The standard that we hold unambiguous black women to is so high, but for someone who looks like Zendaya, it's enough to be pretty on screen and say lines, and it's an Emmy-winning performance. If you can't tell already, I'm not particularly convinced of Zendaya's acting abilities. If you want my completely unfiltered thoughts, that'll be behind the paywall on my Patreon. It's a good time. This disparity highlights the industry's preference for lighter-skinned actresses, even when they are not necessarily more talented. Zendaya's career serves as a prime example of how racial ambiguity can influence opportunities and perceptions in Hollywood. Chapter 2, A History of Black Erasure. To understand the context of Zendaya's career and its implications for black representation, it's essential to dive into the historical roots of black erasure in the media. Black erasure has been a persistent issue since the early days of American literature and media. One of the most enduring stereotypes is the tragic mulatto, which Angela Davis talks about in Women, Race, and Class. Excellent book. I don't have to tell you that. I shouldn't have to tell you that. The tragic mulatto is a trope that portrays biracial characters as caught between two worlds, often eliciting sympathy from white audiences. This trope was used in abolitionist literature to garner support for the anti-slavery movement by highlighting the plight of mixed-race individuals rather than addressing the systemic injustices faced by monoracial black people. A classic example is Eliza from Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. Eliza, a quadroon, embodies white motherhood and gentleness, appealing to white readers while distorting the reality of black women's experiences during slavery. As Angela Davis notes, Eliza's character fails to capture the strength and resistance of black women, instead portraying them as passive and submissive. Another significant example of erasure is the story of Claudette Colvin. Claudette Colvin was the first person to refuse to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus, 9 months before Rosa Parks, who we all learned about in school. However, due to colorism and the fact that she was pregnant as a teenager, civil rights activists chose to use Rosa Parks as the symbol of resistance. Parks, being lighter-skinned and more respectable in the eyes of the public, was seen as a more palatable figure for the movement. This decision highlights how even within the black community, lighter-skinned individuals and biracial individuals were often preferred for representation, perpetuating a pattern of erasure for darker-skinned black people and women. This history continues to influence contemporary media, particularly through colorism and featureism. Dark-skinned monoracial black women are often relegated to minor roles or completely erased. This is evident in the recently trending disposable black girlfriend trope, when the black female characters are brought in as the love interest for typically a white lead for a few episodes or maybe even a season, and put at odds with who they're actually going to end up with, which is typically a white woman. And it just reinforces the idea that even when black women are desired, they are not who you end up with in the end. They are a stepping stone along your path, along your journey. And this is such a common trope, and it's really sad to see. This erasure is also evident in the disparity of ages with successful black women in the industry. This is something I've noticed, but majority of black women, when they find success, it's either when they're very young or very mature. Examples of the younger actresses would be Marsai Martin, Venjanae Wallace, who was the youngest actress ever to be nominated for Best Actress at, I think, 9. This is also seen with a lot of the prominent Disney stars, like I mentioned, China Anne McClain, Coco Jones when they're younger. It's rare that we see them translate that success into their later in life. Keke Palmer is a rare example, as well as, no, I think Keke Palmer might be the only example. Coco Jones is also still working. I don't want to make it seem like these women aren't working, but they're not seeing the same mainstream success that they probably would if they had a different complexion. For the more mature actresses, we have Viola Davis, Taraji P. Henson, and there's so many, I can't even name all of them right now, and it's well deserved that they're getting this success, but we can see it's not until they reach a certain age. Maybe I'm biased because it's my age group, but I have yet to see someone from the age of 18 to 25. Can you guys name a monoracial black actress, light skin or dark skin, from the age of 18 to 25? Because I can't. Where are they? Please inform me. I'm so curious. And what shows are they on? Have they been working consistently? Like, it's just like that. There's a complete gap there. Oh, Chloe and Halle. I love Io Debris, and I'm so happy she's getting work. Naomi Aki is another example, but Io's about to be 30, and all of those other women are older than 30. But this very specific group of like young adult black women is just completely missing. And dare I say, it feels intentional. I have a few theories as to why, but this video is already so long. But on the other hand, I can name so many biracial or racially ambiguous actresses from that age range. We have Jocelyn Clare, Amanda Sternberg, Taylor Russell, Tyla, Yara Shahidi, Pink Pantheress, Alicia Bowe, Dandy Newton's daughter, so many more. There's so many. Because people will be like, oh, there are black actresses. Yeah, but they're either children or the age of my mother or older. And there was a time where there was so many black women in media, like Regina Hall, Regina King, Gabrielle Union, when they were young. But that has just phased out, I think. And, you know, we can see the DEI rollbacks. Black people wanting to distinguish who is biracial comes from a place of safety. Again, Zendaya can't help that she is seen as the acceptable version of a black girl. But with Hollywood's return to whiteness as the standard, we can see that she is willing to go along with it and not advocate for black people unless it means she's represented. She's one of the very few people of color in the industry with power to produce and get shows and films greenlit with her name alone. And what does she use it for? And I'm not one of those people that excuses and thinks that it's not every POC's place to platform other people. Like that's not their job. Sure, if Zendaya had never shown an interest in black issues or, you know, tried to be an ally or claim to be an ally, I actually wouldn't expect that from her. I don't expect that from Zoe Saldana, black woman from Detroit. But for her to use the plight of black women and center herself as an ally who understands the plight of black women, but also then never do anything to address that or actually be an ally is a problem. It's not something you get to opt in or out of when you want to look good in the media, especially when you're aware of the problem and you use performative activism to accelerate and benefit your career and your success in the industry, but don't pay any of that back to the black community.
And I think for me, and what I admire so much about you as well, is we always have this concept that there can only be one, right? And when you get through the door, you want to close the door because there's like just one slot. And we have to change that mentality because otherwise, like, how are the opportunities going to happen, you know? And so when you see creatives who are able to open doors and open opportunities and allow for other creatives to come in, that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I want to be able to continue to get to that point where I can do that. And I'm still kind of working to it. I'm not necessarily, you know, Ava DuVernay who can just like, boom, this is what's happening. But I'm on my way, and that's what I want to do. I want to be able to be a platform for other people and other black creatives to be creative. Because it's not a lack of talent, it's a lack of opportunity.
It's editing Kaylani here, and I just wanted to add something else I noticed. It's so weird how in multiple of these clips she talks about how it's not a lack of talent, it's a lack of opportunity, and I'm thinking she's been a producer since she was 16 years old, so almost a decade. And that's a rare power to have in Hollywood. And I'm thinking in that decade, she didn't have access to create opportunities for other black creators. She's sitting across from Issa Rae, a prominent black figure in Hollywood who consistently greenlights projects. So their combined power could make some really interesting projects. But also the people she does create those opportunities for are white men. Sam Levinson is who she's collaborated with on multiple projects, most notably Euphoria. But she also asked him to write a script for her, which was Malcolm Marie, that was filmed during the pandemic. And if you've seen the film, it's from the perspective of a black man, and he's ranting about, you know, how hard it is to be a black man in the industry. And this is all written by a white man, Sam Levinson. And then fast forward to Challengers years later, and again, it's a script about one of the main characters is a black woman, and is telling the story of black women in tennis from the perspective of a white man. So I am just very confused. Why hasn't she created those opportunities? My main guess is she doesn't want to rock the boat. But again, why are you speaking on these issues that you know you have no interest in actually taking a stand for? To again quote the lovely Angelica Jade Bastian, has she really had black romantic partners or even interacted intimately with black people on screen? There's her mom and sister in Euphoria, but beyond that, she tends to exist in a very white milieu. She's not only the acceptable version of a black girl in Hollywood because she's thin and light-skinned and biracial. I think it's because, now this is going to sound mean, I think it's because she gives them the veneer of black women's anger, but not the full experience of it. Every attempt at addressing race in Zendaya's filmography is so superficial, so when Zendaya says, "I'm having so much fun taking care of my little white boy," it rings tremendously hollow in a film that completely centers whiteness, including her own. Bastian also brings up similar points about how her status gives her the ability to produce, and how when she does, she gravitates towards roles that are surrounded by whiteness, and race is never really acknowledged. I think it's interesting because around the time of the Issa Rae interview, Zendaya's runways and red carpet appearances were explicitly black with hairstyles like faux locks, cornrows, and afros, when she was allegedly trying to take roles meant for white women, when it really seemed like she was capitalizing on her blackness and black aesthetics to fill the role role of Hollywood's acceptable version of a black girl. I looked back through Zendaya's 2024 red carpet appearances and I couldn't see a single black hairstyle, but I did see her flaunting, blonde, straight hair or slicked back, nothing that really screamed black. And I think that's very intentional with how the industry is trending back towards whiteness. Then fast forward to today where she has gotten success and power to even produce as the token black woman. Zendaya is a huge name and has power in the industry, but she refuses to go against her expected role as the safe and marketable black girl, and that's why she's so beloved in the industry. If this was a problem she truly cared about, now that she has power in the industry, you'd think she'd use it to platform black women, since she claims to understand how they are underrepresented. And I think it's so interesting because the interview was conducted by Issa Rae, and Issa Rae is one of the most prominent black women in the industry who understands the importance of representation for black women and has created shows like Insecure, Rap Shit, and now just released One of Them Days with Keke Palmer and SZA as the leads. Issa Rae goes out of her way to feature unambiguous black women leads, free of stereotypes and just living life, and she's so intentional about platforming us in all of our shades and shapes, and I think that's so amazing. Then there's Quinta Brunson, who's doing the same on Abbott Elementary, and even Robin Thede, who is biracial, but has a black mom. If you know, you know. Robin Thede created a Black Lady sketch show featuring black women, again, of all shades, shapes, and sizes, and I just wanted to include them because this shows that it is completely possible to make room and representation for the black women you know are underrepresented, if you actually want to. But sadly, most people will settle for the performative activism that Zendaya has to offer. But I think it's known that monoracial black women can typically always rely on each other to platform each other and represent each other. Black men, on the other hand, well, chapter 3, pro-black men, but women. Also Drake.
And then you got Darth Vader, the blackest brother in the galaxy, Nubian god.
What's a Nubian?
Shut the fuck up.
The erasure of monoracial black women doesn't just happen outside of the black community. It's often reinforced by black male creators who claim to champion black representation. While those creators are quick to center authentic depictions of black male experiences, they consistently pair these men with biracial, racially ambiguous, or non-black women, perpetuating the very colorism and anti-blackness they might critique in other contexts. Kenya Barris, for example, has built his career on pro-black content like Blackish and Black AF, yet consistently cast light-skinned or biracial women in leading roles. In Black AF, Rashida Jones plays his wife despite the show's explicit focus on black identity and experiences. This pattern continues across all of his productions. Donald Glover, I know I'm gonna send myself a cease and desist. Like, I can't stop mentioning Childish Gambino. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't actually think about this man that much, but he just always pops up when we're having conversations about black women and, supposed pro-blackness. So sorry, but Donald Glover also follows this pattern. In Atlanta, a show celebrated for its authentic portrayal of black male experiences, Van, played by Zazie Beetz, is the only female character, and again, she's a biracial actress. And when Donald Glover did decide to platform a monoracial dark-skinned actress, she was a serial killer, and he gave her the note to not think of her as a human, but more like an animal, the way you would if you didn't like black women. But even Spike Lee, and this one kills me, a pioneer of black cinema who has created powerful works centered on black experiences, has historically shown a preference for casting biracial or lighter-skinned actresses in leading romantic roles opposite darker-skinned black men. He does make up for it with She's Gotta Have It, but I still had to mention him. We even see this in shows like The Boondocks, and this one actually hurts the most because I love The Boondocks, but there is not a single monoracial black woman main character. We have Jasmine, we have Tom's wife, what's her name? And we have like 4 black men. We have 4 monoracial black men main characters, and then we have like 1 episode centered around a black woman every season. So yeah, this isn't about a lack of power or opportunity like a lot of people make it out to be. Jordan Peele is a great example of this. He deliberately casts darker skinned black women like Lupita Nyong'o and Keke Palmer as leads in his films. And I hate to say it, I know, but Tyler Perry, I know all of the things wrong with Tyler Perry and his work. I'm not the biggest fan, but Tyler Perry does platform black women. I mean, they pay his bills, but still, he goes out of his way to always platform black women in all shades. And I think he deserves a little bit of credit for that. That's the little bit I'm willing to give him, So this is not to say that all black men do this. There are obvious examples of people who don't. Jordan Peele even has a white mom and he does this. So again, that is the theory, you know. And now we gotta talk about Drake. The hypocrisy is so evident in how some of these pro-black men react to biracial or light-skinned men. The criticism Drake receives from other black male artists and has since the beginning of his career about being mixed and light-skinned stands in stark contrast to the same men's preferences for biracial women in their videos, films, and personal lives. They criticize in men the same exact qualities they love in women. And obviously this comes with colorism working in opposite ways for men and women, with darker skin being seen as more masculine, and in turn making dark-skinned Black women seem masculine, which is so stupid. And then also light skin being equated with feminine qualities and being softer. Kendrick Lamar and other Black men in the industry defend their bullying and criticism of Drake for being an appropriator and a colonizer. And while that criticism is true, I think a lot of it does stem from their just genuine frustration at a light-skinned biracial man being so successful in the rap sphere. It's hard for them to hide it. But it's so weird because he's literally the male version of their preference in women who engage in similar culture vulture behavior. I'm not saying Kendrick Lamar's wife is a culture vulture, but again, it is interesting to see who these pro-Black men partner up with. To put this in perspective, imagine them casting Drake or like Jesse Williams or even Justice Smith as like Kobe. Like, can you imagine the outrage from Black men? Can you imagine? But they're so okay with it when there's no Black women in a show. They're so okay with it. They're more than okay. Look at my comments. This pattern and mindset reveals that this erasure isn't just about white gatekeepers rejecting Black beauty. It's also maintained by those within the community who have the power to change the patterns, but choose to reinforce them instead. If the men who claim to fight for Black representation truly cared about the whole community, wouldn't their casting choices reflect that? Chapter 4, Windmilling from Black women.
It's one of those things for me where if you don't see how possible it is for you to achieve so much through me, being the complexion that you think is not deserving or not succeeding, with all that I've succeeded, that's when it's tough, Shay Shay. Mm-hmm. That's when it's tough for me because I do all these things and I'm representing us.
Right.
So then you should know that that's a lie.
Right.
That you can, and by the way, I'm not the only one. There's Oprah Winfrey, Viola Davis, Taraji P. Henson, Angela Bassett, Keke Palmer, Naomi Campbell,
Megan Good.
Megan Good. I mean, the list goes on. And so I think it's fighting against those social constructs that tell our people that because you're this, you can't be that. Because you're that, you can't be this. And so, it's kind of like let me go back to the drawing board and see what I can cook up. But it's one of those things where you can't really change people's perceptions of what their life can be.
Right.
And if it means diminishing you to agree to the status quo that I've accepted so that I don't push myself further, then that's what I'm going to do. But facts are the facts.
There's another layer of this that I want to touch on. I've mentioned Keke Palmer a few times in this video, and I want to bring up, I think it was around the time that Nope came out, maybe like 2021. It's been a while. But social media, specifically Twitter, started drawing comparisons between Keke Palmer and Zendaya. People pointed out that despite Keke's immense talent and longer career, she hasn't achieved the same level of industry power and recognition as Zendaya. And they theorized that colorism was the contributing factor. But then Keke Palmer came in windmilling. Keke, I love you, but you were windmilling. A great example of colorism is to believe I can be compared to anyone. I'm an incomparable talent, baby. This is Keke Palmer. I can't read this without doing a Keke impression. A great example of colorism is to believe I can be compared to anyone. I'm the youngest talk show host ever, the first Black woman to star in her own show on Nickelodeon, and the youngest and first Black Cinderella on Broadway. I'm an incomparable talent. Baby, this is Keke Palmer. I've been a leading lady since I was 11 years old. I have over 100 plus credits and currently starring in an original screenplay that's the #1 film at the box office. #Nope. I've had a blessed career thus far. I couldn't ask for more, but God continues to surprise me. Like, okay, you're the first, you're the youngest, you're all of these things, but you sure don't get paid like it. You're an incomparable talent, but the other talent is getting paid 10 times what you're getting paid. And this is the frustrating thing about this. Like, she's acting like I couldn't ask for more. You definitely could. And so this tweet was made in 2022, and then I found this interview of her with Shannon Sharp in 2025 talking about colorism again at the comparisons to Zendaya. And it's clear to me that Keke does not have a clear understanding of what colorism is and doesn't have an interest in understanding what it is. So, and Keke, I love you, but girl, what are we talking about? This is actually very common with monoracial Black women in the industry, not wanting to address colorism and instead pushing the idea that they're so exceptionally talented that it doesn't affect them, or that it somehow shows weakness to acknowledge this disadvantage, which is so far from the truth and sad that people think that's the case. But I did point out the pay disparities between Keke Palmer and Zendaya, and I think it's crazy because Keke has been working since she was a child, and just a few years ago, until the Black creatives I mentioned like Jordan Peele and Issa Rae decided to give her roles, she was interviewing other stars when she should have been on the other side of that interview on red carpets. And now even like she's not being paid what a Keke Palmer should be paid. And while Zendaya is racking in money and will probably be able to retire very soon, Keke Palmer is still going to have to be working. And she's been working since she was a child, you know, and I think she enjoys it, but it's not even an option to retire early. And I think that is something that is a real long-term effect of colorism. And that's something that is important to address. And if we act like it's not a factor, it doesn't do anything but hurt Black women. This behavior actually creates a perfect shield for figures like Zendaya to never be held accountable. If Black women themselves are going to publicly pretend that colorism isn't a thing, why would Zendaya or the industry feel any pressure to address it? It's a cycle that keeps the system intact while putting the burden on individual Black women to simply be exceptional enough to overcome systemic barriers. The truth is that acknowledging colorism does not diminish Keke Palmer's talent in any way. It simply recognizes that talent alone doesn't determine opportunity in Hollywood. And until we can have honest conversations about this, including amongst ourselves as a Black community, nothing's going to change. This is sadly also a result of internalized anti-Blackness. A lot of Black women windmill for actresses like Zendaya or Amandla because subconsciously or consciously, that's who they want to represent us, and that's who they see themselves in. Chapter 6, Justifications and False Equivalencies. The rationale offered by a lot of these actors who are benefiting from their biracial privilege reveal exactly why this conversation is so necessary. There's this clip of Justice Smith talking about his approach to taking roles meant for Black characters that perfectly illustrates what I'm talking about.
They prefer lighter skin. They view lighter skinned Black people as being more friendly or smarter or closer to whiteness, essentially. Yeah. So that's why they cast them in movies and television shows over darker skinned people. So I didn't want to participate in that as much as I could. But then I also, just recently, I was like, but there are also lighter skinned Black people who are just Black, who aren't biracial, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, and I also know Black people who aren't biracial who play biracial roles too. So I'm like, I think that I can give myself a little bit of grace here in this movie, and I'm gonna just see how that resonates with people and see how that resonates with me and what my responsibility is, in this racial hierarchy.
I need us to retire the phrase give myself grace. I'm gonna give myself grace when doing stuff is completely wrong. You should give yourself grace if you're, having a tough day and you just want to relax. Not when you're complicit in the erasure of Black people. What are we talking about? And I like Justice Smith. I mean, I should have stopped liking him after the Magical Society of Negroes. What was that? He's talking about giving himself grace when taking roles meant for Black characters. Because sometimes Black actors play biracial characters as if those two things are in any way the same. This completely ignores how colorism and featureism benefit biracial Black people and monoracial people who can pass as biracial. There's a fundamental power imbalance there that he's completely ignoring because he can. To say that where do I fall in this racial hierarchy? You're white. You're white and Black. Some people are just Black. Where do you think you land on the racial hierarchy, sir? The language used reveals he knows there's something problematic happening, but he's choosing to justify it rather than challenging the system because it benefits him. When a biracial actor takes a role written for unambiguously Black characters, they're participating in a system that already systemically erases monoracial Black people, especially those with darker skin and Afrocentric features. But when a monoracial actor occasionally plays a biracial character, that's not continuing a pattern of erasure or discrimination. It's this kind of false equivalency that prevents honest conversations about this topic. It frames biracial actors as equally disadvantaged in the industry when all the evidence points to the opposite. Racial ambiguity is rewarded and unambiguous Blackness is marginalized, period. It's not all bleak though. There are some amazing Black actresses that are finally getting the spotlight and shine they deserve, and I really wanted to dedicate a section to highlight them because I'm just so in awe of a lot of these women. I just hope that we see more of their work because they already have had such an impact on me and their work that they've done, but they deserve a never-ending list of opportunities because they are just so talented and captivating on screen, and they are what I want to see when I go to the cinema. I'm sick of pretending like I'm okay with seeing Zendaya in every other film. I'm tired. And also I want these women to be generously, not even fairly, generously compensated for their work. Reparations. These actresses include Naomi Aki, who was incredible in Mickey 17. If you haven't seen it, run to the theater. I put Bong Joon-ho on my smash cake, and now you hoes know why, right? Kiki Palmer, SZA, Doechii, Halle Bailey, Coco Jones, Anok Yai, Hemlock Springs, Iowa Debris, Taylor Page, my love. Watch Zola if you haven't. Felicia Pearl and Posse, Cynthia Erivo, Arsema Thomas, Dominique Fishback, Leah Jeffries, Delaney Hales, Vivian Oprah. Just wanted to say I love these actresses and they are seen. And check out their work, please. When we look at patterns of representation in Hollywood, it's clear that this isn't just about individual casting choices. It's about a system that consistently elevates certain types of Black women and erases others. What makes the situation particularly frustrating is that the power to change things already exists. And we can see the people that are using that power to be the change that they want to see. We've seen creators like Issa Rae, Quinta Brunson, and Jordan Peele deliberately use their power to showcase unambiguous Black women and men, proving that different choices are possible when representation truly matters to those in charge. The solution isn't to blame biracial actors for taking opportunities, it's to hold them and the industry accountable, especially when they are in positions of power like Zendaya as a producer. We need a more nuanced understanding of representation that doesn't treat all Black women as interchangeable. It's to demand that when characters are written specifically to represent Black women, like Serena Williams, or biracial women who aren't white, like Naomi Osaka, the industry should make authentic casting choices rather than defaulting to the same acceptable version of Blackness. Anyways, I hope this video has given you something to think about. You can still like Zendaya. This wasn't supposed to be an attack on Zendaya. It was just really just to hold her accountable and people like her in the industry who have the power to change things and are aware of the issues, because I am so tired of people getting to opt in and out of social issues. I'm really tired of it. Anyways, I hope this video has given you something to think about and hopefully even encourages you to look a little deeper into the media you consume and not just absorb these narratives that are pushed to you by publicists and celebrities who don't have your best interest in mind. Real change starts when we stop accepting the status quo and start demanding better for ourselves and the people that look like us. That's all I have for you today. I can't imagine how long this video is going to be, but if you stuck around this long, you're a real one. You're a real one, and I just want to let you know I appreciate you. You are seen, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share the video if you enjoyed it. And as always, I can't wait to read your comments and your thoughts down below. Thank you again so much for your support, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Oh my god. I filmed this whole video and I forgot to say thank you guys for 10,000 subscribers. I have 10,000 subscribers and I can't even comprehend that. Thank you so much.